In this video, we are going to talk about HTML style attribute and inline CSS that they use to add styles to an element such as color, size, font, and more. I told you earlier that HTML is the structure of the website, but the visual parts such as fonts, colors, place of different elements is controlled by CSS that we are going to cover later in the course, but now here we have our inline CSS and style attribute that we can use this attribute to add a style to our elements to make you a little more familiar with CSS. Basically, HTML is the bones and CSS is our skin. The way we are going to use style attribute is like this. First, we have our tag name. After that, we have this style attribute. This is a syntax, and we can have the closing tag here, or it depends on the element that we want to write. After that, here we are going to write our CSS code. And the way we are going to write that, we are going to write property here. And after this, here we have our value. For example, let's create another HTML file and make it a little prettier so you can be more familiar with CSS. I told you earlier, if you just type this exclamation mark and press enter, you have this template type HTML that we can use in our code. And let's open this HTML file so we can see what we are doing. Here it is. Let me close this. Okay. For example, here I have h1 tag, and here is our title. And if we want to make the color of this, for example, red, we are going to type style. Then here we have this color property, and here we are going to type our value. For example, here I want to make it red. And if I refresh the page, you see that our h1 element now is in red. But you can change this, for example, make this blue. And if I refresh, you see that now we have blue text. And if we want to add our RGB values here in the CSS, we can just type RGB here. And inside this, we are going to pass our numbers. For example, 255, 255, and 255. This is the white colors RGB code. Here, if I refresh, because it's white, you're not gonna see anything. For example, let's make this 54. Now, if I refresh the page, you see that we have passed our RGB color here, and our h1 element is in the same color. Beside of that, we can use the thing called RGBA. What RGBA is simply the same RGB, but after these numbers, we're going to add another number that is opacity of the element. For example, if I make it half of the opacity, refresh the page, you see that it's got a little disappearing type thing on it. And if we want to pass the hex code of a color here, we can just type sharp here, and after that, we can pass our color. Now you see, if I refresh the page, our title is now in some green thing color. But you can use this simple thing to control your color. If you hover on this, you have this window open that you can make your color as you want, and this is the opacity of that. For example, I wanted something like this, orange and in full opacity. If I refresh, you'll see now I have this color here. Now let's add another HTML tag here, and in this one we are going to pass background to our element. First, we're going to clear this color, and then we are going to type background color. And here you see we have this suggestions here. We click on that, and then here what color we pass as the color we are going to have in our HTML file. For example, I like this royal blue color. Let's click on that and refresh the page. You see now we have our background right here. This space you see before and after this rectangular, we are going to cover that. It's because of margins and paddings, in this case margins. We are going to cover this in CSS part. Now let's make this color for seeing it better. Refresh the page. Yeah. Now let's add border to our element. First, let's copy this line, and to duplicate a line, you can press Shift, Alt, and hold them and use arrows to duplicate the line. Let's write border here. Okay, now in the CSS part, we are going to type border, and in this part, we are going to pass 3 values. First one is the width of the border that we want. For example, here, let's say we want it to be 2 pixels, okay? After that, we are going to define how our border we want to be. For example, we want it to be solid, dotted, or others. In this case, I'm typing solid for the first try, and then we are going to pass the color that we want. Let's use hex here, for example, 45 F26 4. And if I refresh the page, let's see, yes, here we have a little syntax error. Here you see that we got our border right here. And if I make this, for example, 5px and refresh the page, you see that we have our border changed. And we can have this in other ways too. For example, let's test dotted. We simply write dotted here, and if I refresh, you see that the style of our border is now changed. And another example, for example, dashed. Refresh the page, you see now it's like this. We're going to cover all type of borders and other things. I told you in the CSS part, and I will create a cheat sheet for it and put the link in the description of that video. Another thing that we can use with CSS is to define our height and width. For example, here, let's make image tag and test that properties in that element. I told you earlier how to create that. We type image, or you can just simply type img and the VS Code automatically create this for you. And here, if you press Ctrl and space, you see your files and you can pick this. If I refresh the page now, you'll see that we have this image here, but it's not the right size. We want this be a little smaller. So we are going to add our style attribute here, and here we can have our width property, and let's say we want it 200 pixels. And if I refresh the page, you see that we have this. The height of the image is automatically set when we put width here. But let's make this a little bigger, 400 pixels. Let's make this 5. Okay, yes, this is good. But let's say we want to make the height of the image a little more bigger. After this semicolon, we're going to type our height property and, for example, 400 pixel for the height. And if I refresh that, you see our change into the file. Let's clear this height to make this prettier. Okay, now have this. But here in the width, we can use other type of measurements. For example, we can use % of the box that the element inside of it. For example, if I type here 50% and refresh the page, you see it's 50% of the base element that our image element is inside it. And here our base element is body that we have image inside it. For example, we have VW for view width, and this is this. We are going to see lots of this in this CSS part. Next topic I want to talk with you is our fonts. To do that, I'm gonna create paragraph here. For example, lorem 5 here is enough. Now you'll see our paragraph in basic font. But if we want to add font to it, we're going to type style here. And after that, we're going to type font family right here. This is our property. And for the value, we're going to pass the name of the font that we want. For example, if I write this name here and refresh the page, you'll see that now we have our font changed. You'll see if we want to add a style to our web page like this with this style attribute and inline CSS. And by the way, if we write the CSS inside our HTML, this is called inline CSS. We're going to cover other type of CSS later, but you see that this takes too much time and energy. Because of that, we are going to create another CSS file and link it into our HTML so we can use and control it easier. Please give a like and subscribe to catch next videos.